Ethiopian survival. The revenge of the Baboon clan. On the sun-baked crags of the Ethiopian Highlands, the wind blows through the crevices, carrying the scent of dry earth and the dull roar of a crumbling world. There, amid the chaos of the baboons, a child witnesses the unthinkable, the death of his mother, not by one of his own kind, but by the fangs of a jungle predator, the leopard. The Ethiopian highlands are covered in a thin mist. The wind blows through the bushes, carrying the scent of dry earth and the sporadic sounds of early morning. A flock of francolines digs through the leaves for worms, then soars as the baboons' cries echo from the canyon. Timu is a baboon a few months old, just learning to forage and climb, abandoned by his own group. His mother has long since died, killed by a hunter. Wandering alone among the rocks and thorns, Timu came across a few other abandoned males. But then, in the cold and hunger, they learned to share every fruit, shade, and warmth. In the wild, a small group began to live together not for friendship, but for survival. Years passed. No one taught Timu how to survive. But that was what made him different. From a weak cub abandoned by the pack, Timu gradually became a tough individual. His body was toned over time. His eyes became as sharp as broken stone. Fear no longer made him tremble, so Timu quietly observed and remembered everything. No one thought Timu would survive. But among the thorns and the lurking predators, he still lived. Timu learned to follow food trails, to avoid the claws of enemies, to choose the safest shelter to spend the night. Once, his whole pack was noticed by a lioness. That amber gaze followed them for days. That yellow figure often appeared at dusk, forcing Timu and his companions to change their travel and foraging habits. But this very danger trained them to have a warrior reflex to communicate wordlessly with their eyes, coordinate their actions in silence, and always be ready for the worst. In Timu's mind, the death of his mother never faded. It was not just a memory, but a goal. But before he could take revenge, Timu knew he had to be strong enough and change a world that was rotting from within. Every wound, every cold, sleepless night, every time he was almost torn apart, all of it tempered Timu into a different individual. Tough, intelligent, and dangerous. While Timu gradually took shape as a warrior among rocks and thorns, in the sea there also appeared a creature living with wisdom and resilience. down a valley from where the monkeys had set up camp. As the night fell like a thick velvet blanket, a low, shrill laugh rang out. Not happy, but full of meaning. It was the distinctive laugh of the brown hyena, a mysterious and often forgotten creature among the prominent predators. Among them, Narka stood out, a female hyena who had lived long enough to see 2 generations of baboons change their thrones. Narka was not as large or as prominent as the lion rulers, but she had something that Timu was only just learning, the patience of a hunter. Narka was not only a ghost among the rocks, she was also a bold opportunist in places where others rarely ventured, the salty, cold winds of the Ethiopian coast. The sun was high in the sky. The sea reflected the harsh sunlight, casting bright patches of light on the rocks. Large male brown seals lazed on the rocks, yawning and occasionally growling as they fought for a spot to bask. Not far away, baby birds just a few weeks old with pale spotted fur were sleeping near the water's edge, carefree amid the murmur of waves and salty sea breeze. That was the moment Narka had been waiting for. Crossing the quicksand, past the low thorn bushes along the shore, Narka suddenly stopped. The hair on the back of his neck bristled. The wind changed direction and carried with it the scent of the one he did not want to meet, the black-backed jackal. Narka rushed out of the low bushes, across the slippery edge of the rocks like a silent whirlwind. No long chase. Just a precise blow and a full meal for her pups on a chilly afternoon. From the distant rocks, Narka stood silently looking down at the beach. The water shimmered silver, as if nothing had happened. But for him, The coastal area had become a new extension of his territory, and no one but the patient and silent one was allowed to rule it. As the twilight stretched across the sand, Narka entered the mouth of the cave where the small eyes were shining brightly. The jackals had retreated, and Narka had brought back a full meal for his children. A bloodless but heroic victory. While Narka's children slept warmly among the cold rocks, deep in the heart of the arid plateau, another society was slowly becoming unstable. Reka's baboon troop continued as if nothing had changed. But the wind was different. No one in the troop dared to say it out loud. But the smell of burning grass, the rustling of leaves, and the increasingly quiet eyes of the females all told him that something was approaching. Reka, though old, was still a notorious tyrant who seemed not to notice. He still sat on the high rock that had been his invisible throne for so many years. His black mane was already streaked with silver, but his eyes were still fierce. He growled when a young male got too close to a female, baring his teeth in a threatening manner, despite his knees not being as strong as they once were. For Reka, dominance was not based on physical strength, but on the bloody memories the pack had not forgotten. Until one morning, a small noise from the edge of their territory made several young males raise their heads. A shadow appeared, not exactly strange, but not familiar either. It was Timu, no longer the weakling that had been chased away years ago. He had returned, larger, more muscular, his eyes as sharp as broken stone. And he was not alone. Behind him were other males, each bearing the marks of a life outside the law. The pack fell silent. Reka looked down from above. For the first time in many breeding seasons, his eyes were not filled with anger, but with consideration. Raka's fierce roar cut through the air like a knife. And then he pounced. After overthrowing Raka, Timu did not re-establish tyranny. He shared influence with his allies, let his children choose freely, and used prestige rather than fangs to lead. The monkeys gradually entered a period of stability, knowing for the first time what peace was. But in nature, peace is only a thin shell that hides danger. From the edge of the forest bordering the plateau, a pair of yellow eyes flashed in the darkness. No sound, no signal. Not a hyena, not a jackal. It was a leopard, the one who had killed Timu's mother years ago. And it was waiting. Moru's name was like the wind whistling through the canopy. A female leopard, not as large as the male of her species, but faster, more discreet, and more ruthless than any hunter in the forest bordering the plateau. She was not just a hunter, she was a mother. 3 weeks ago, Moru gave birth to a cub in a windproof crevice in the rocks. The cubs were too young to follow, their eyes still misty and hungry. Every infantile screech from the den was a reminder to Moru that he could not fail. He could not return empty-handed. He could not let the enemy find his way. Above, the dry forest stirred in the early morning breeze. Dry leaves rustled beneath the feet of a herd of antelope, slowly approaching the edge of a shallow stream to lick salt. Nearby, striped mongooses reared up, taking turns keeping watch as their smaller flocks foraged for insects. Their screeches, scratches, and occasional catches sounded like a warning soundtrack. Further on the high rocks, vultures lined up, their eyes trained on the area where Timu had just established his power. They did not land, but they did not leave, for they clearly sensed the unrest that still simmered beneath that fragile layer of peace. In the midst of these layers of activity, Moru quietly slipped through the low canopy, her body as soft as water, following the roots of the trees and the terrain. She did not interrupt the rhythm of the forest she was part of. No species is alone here, and all are linked in an invisible tension. When the antelopes are frightened, the mongooses are silent, and the vultures begin to stir. It is the moment when death passes quietly. The afternoon falls on the Ethiopian plateau. The last light of the day spread thinly like a hazy golden dust. The rays of light slant across the low grass, illuminating every tree trunk, every stone, every damp footprint. In the open space between the trees, Timu's baboon troop rests in the late afternoon light. The young lie near the shallow roots. A few females scatter to find food. In the distance, the darkness from the west is gradually covering the land. Moru, stalking close to the ground, his body blending into the light brown grass. The wind is favorable. He does not hide in the trees. He does not need to. For leopards, if the ground is flat enough, the light is bright enough, and the baboons are loose enough, height is not needed, only distance and timing. But But this time, what he thought was an opening was a trap. Timu had been waiting for this day for a long time. He smelled the trail, felt the unusual silence in the grassland. The fight ended quickly and bloody. Moru could not escape. When he fell, it was Timu was the one who stepped forward, his eyes not angry, just cold as the mountain rocks. He did not need to scream. He did not need to show off. He just looked down, then turned away so that the others could finish off their old enemy. In the thick darkness of the Ethiopian highlands, where life does not allow for romance or forgiveness, a blood debt was finally paid. And Timu, who once did not deserve to live, now became the one who rewrote the rules of survival with his own wounds. How do you feel about survival stories? Remember to leave a comment below the video. Hit the bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next wild stories from the amazing natural world. Mapogo, the deadly alliance of the savannah. When the first rays of sunlight hit the cracked earth of the African wilderness, an ancient law still exists. In the world of lions, every male must eventually leave. When a male lion reaches adulthood, he is pushed out by his pride. Without the protection of his mother, without the tolerance of his father, it is the beginning of a journey of survival, alone, full of blood and fangs. But in 2006, in the Sabi Sands Game Reserve, South Africa, something unusual happened. 6 male lions, not in the same pride, not related by blood, chose to stay together. Their names will be remembered by the whole world: Makulu, Rasta, Scar, Pretty Boy, Kinky Tail, and Mr. T. Six wild warriors forming an unprecedented alliance, both in numbers and influence. No one knows why they bonded, perhaps because they grew up together in times of scarcity, or simply because their survival instincts made them need each other more than ever. Day by day they grew up in silence, without fanfare, without growling and fighting, but each pounce, each step was stronger. Not long after, the whole reserve began to stir. A group of male lions moved together, hunted together, and fought as if they had only one will. When animals, once known as solitary, united creatures, they were no longer individuals, they became phenomena. And a legend began from here, when 6 male lions put aside their egos to create something bigger than themselves. An alliance, an empire, a nightmare for all opponents. At that moment, no one knew that they had just witnessed the beginning of the greatest lion alliance that nature had ever produced. They were not simply wandering around looking for shelter. They had a target, and that target was an entire kingdom. The Lion Alliance, with 6 adult individuals, each strong enough to rule an area, now marched forward together, silently but unstoppably. The first territory they targeted belonged to 2 old lions, who had once held the largest pride of females in the eastern Sabi Sands. Without negotiation, without warning, within minutes, the Mapogo alliance had ended that dynasty, a death so swift that no one could understand what had happened. From that moment on, they were no longer exiles, but conquerors. Within 3 months, the Mapogo alliance controlled more than 4 adjacent territories, from the eastern Sabi Sands all the way to the banks of the Sand River. No one dared to cross the boundaries they had set. Makulu, the oldest and most experienced, became the hidden leader. Scar and Pretty Boy were a pair. Kinky Tail and Mr. T often leads the raids. Rasta, quiet but ruthless, always appears at the right moment to end any resistance. Instead of dividing the pride, they divide into battle lines, one group holding the territory, the other group attacking the next. This is no longer natural behavior, it is strategy. No one in the world of biology has ever seen anything like it. Male lions often kill each other for territory, but Mapogo share. They do not fight, do not overthrow each other. Each knows his role and no one surpasses the other. Survivors of prides they conquer call it the six-headed black storm. But this dominance does not only affect the male lions. Female prides lose entire cubs in these takeovers. Mapogo do not spare any genetic offspring that do not have their bloodline. They do not stop. Every step, every claw mark carries a declaration. This land is ours, and if it is not, it will be sooner or later. This was no longer an alliance. This was an empire ruling with its claws, its wits, and the fear it instilled in every blade of grass on the savannah. In the world of lions, a lucky male would have been hard-pressed to hold a territory for more than 2 years. But Mapogo, with its 6 lions, each with their own killer instinct, did the unthinkable, maintaining its supremacy for more than 6 years. From 2006 to 2012, Mapogo did more than expand its sphere of influence. It wiped out rival male alliances, overthrew more than 8 different control groups, and established a territory of 170,000 hectares, or nearly 1,700 square kilometers, larger than the city of Los Angeles. Makulu, the oldest, often lay still in the center of the pride, his eyes watching every move. Scar and Pretty Boy were an inseparable pair, going shoulder to shoulder everywhere. Mr. T, known for his unusually thick mane and the most brutal of all, is the one who always leads the chase. Kinky Tail, with his signature curled tail, is his right-hand man, and Rasta, mysterious, quiet, but strikes like lightning. In its prime, the number of cubs born from Mapogo-controlled female prides reached hundreds. Many individuals that survived to adulthood carried genes directly from them. The genetic ratio was so high that at times scientists worried that inbreeding would occur in the area. No male alliance had ever left such a deep genetic mark. The Mapogo's roar was not just a signal of occupation, it was the sound of order. Herds of antelope, zebra, and even hyenas would change direction if they heard the sound echoing across the field. The Mapogo's presence was like a gravitational pull no one dared to approach, but also could not ignore. And when hunting, Mapogo did not need to hide. The confidence came from knowing that the prey had no chance of escape. They did not need speed. They had tactics, position, and timing. Each member of the alliance played a role. And the strangest thing is, during their heyday, there was never a single instance of internal fighting. Six adult male lions lived side by side, and there was no competition for breeding rights. That was unprecedented. In a world of distrust and violence, the Mapogo lived by trust. They were kings, but when a dynasty reached its peak, darkness began to gather. On the edges of the empire, young, predatory eyes watched their every move. Every glorious dynasty carries within it the seeds of its downfall. And in nature, the cracks did not come with thunder. They began with silence. From the outside, the Mapogo alliance remained unstoppable. The six male lions, an unprecedented alliance, continued to roar every night, terrifying the savannah. But within the land they ruled, the balance began to waver. Six individuals, six personalities, six different hunting schedules. To maintain their empire spanning nearly 1,700 square kilometers, they were forced to split up. No longer traveling together regularly, gaps began to appear. At the borders, in trust, and among those who had fought together in bloodshed, Mr. T and Kinky Tail, two warriors with a tendency to actively confront each other, were assigned to guard the north. This was the intersection of three emerging male alliances. The most dangerous of these were four young lions as yet unnamed. But known to observers as Selati, after the river they were often seen near. They were nearly half Mapogo's age, tougher, less scarred, and most importantly, they had never tasted defeat. Unlike Mapogo, who moved like a shock troop, the Selati were quieter. They watched Mapogo's habits, his roars, his territorial markings for weeks. And then, one misty June morning, they attacked. Kinky Tail was patrolling alone. Perhaps he was complacent, or perhaps he believed his comrades were nearby. He didn't notice the danger until all 4 attackers had circled around to either side. The battle lasted nearly 15 minutes, longer than any other ambush. Kinky Tail, though badly wounded, managed to bite a Salati in the neck, knocking it down. But eventually his stamina was exhausted. He fell in the grass, his eyes still wide open, as if he hadn't yet come to terms with the truth. Mr. T arrived later. Too late to save him, but in time to see the last scratch marks on the ground, where his closest brother had once lain. Kinky Tail's death was not just a loss, it was a fracture. The alliance of 6 was now down to 5, but to Mapogo each member was an irreplaceable link. Scar began to retreat from the points of conflict. He was no longer interested in hunting in groups. Sometimes he would disappear for weeks at a time, appearing in distant corners of the territory like a ghost. Makulu, now over 10 years old, moved more slowly, coughed more, and showed signs of old age. Rasta still fought, but more quietly than before. And Mr. T, since the loss of his brother, had become unusually fierce, even attacking a lioness in his own pride. Mapogo's territory still existed, but its spirit was no longer intact. When a giant tree is hollow from the inside, it doesn't need a big storm, just a gust of wind to knock it down. When an empire falls into darkness, not all the rest fall. Some still stand, still fight, not for glory, but because it is the only thing they know how to do. After Kinky Tail's death, Mapogo did not immediately disband. But something inside them changed, like a piece of music that loses its bass line, even though the orchestra still plays. Everything is out of tune. Rasta, the quietest of them all, began to become a ghostly guardian. He no longer traveled with the group, but traveled alone to the furthest reaches of the border. If he saw any signs of intrusion, he would strike first, without warning, without growling. Scar, the oldest, the scarred, the smartest, no longer appeared beside anyone. He traveled alone, slept alone, hunted alone. For weeks, observers recorded no trace. When he reappeared, his fur was ragged, his ribs were visible under his skin, his eyes were empty as if he had seen through time. Mr. T and Pretty Boy held on to what was left. They did not part, the two survivors standing silently in the maelstrom of the changed times. They marked their territory every day, but the roars were quieter, the rests longer, and each step carried the weight of memories. Rasta fell in an unequal battle. He fought alone against 3 young males who were testing the boundaries of Mapogo territory. No one knew exactly what happened, but the traces left behind showed that he did not retreat and died while still fighting. There were only 3 Mapogo left. Scar now lived on as a shadow in legend. Some believed he was dead. Others said that every night in the southern border area they heard a lone roar, short, hoarse but far-reaching, as if a spirit still guarded something sacred. Mr. T no longer held himself. He was more aggressive, easily angered, and even attacked the lionesses in the pride. Pretty Boy, on the other hand, was strangely calm, as if he had accepted everything. Between those 2 poles, the last days of the alliance passed like the last breath of an old king. They were no longer conquerors, no longer the center of fear. But in every claw mark left, in every bush marked, was an echo of an era. A whisper to nature that once 6 lions had done the impossible together. When the sunset touched their silvered fur, they no longer looked forward, they only looked back, where their brothers were no longer present but never forgotten. The steppe no longer roared like it used to, but if you listened long enough, you would feel it. Somewhere, the shadows of the fallen warriors still echoed. Scar disappeared without a trace, no body, no final battle, only silence. And in the wild, sometimes, silence is the most fitting end for a creature that once roared across the 4 corners of the earth. Mr. T and Pretty Boy are the last. They no longer conquer territory, no longer hunt rivals. They live on as the last guardians of Mapogo's soul. As the days pass, no one knows exactly how long they will live. But their image, the old lion, the dark mane, the eyes that have witnessed everything, has become the living symbol of a legend. Today, a third of the lion cubs born in the area have Mapogo blood. That legacy is no longer in the raw, but in every cell, every breath of the next generation. We no longer see Mapogo, but Mapogo has never disappeared. The Mapogo Alliance has completely changed the way we perceive lions. They are not alone, not just rulers by force, but creatures who know how to sacrifice, how to trust and live as a unified whole. Since Mapogo, male alliances have become more numerous, larger and more closely knit. All of them unconsciously repeat the pattern that Mapogo left behind. Time may erase footprints, but it cannot erase the mark. And there are legends that, though silent, live on in the breath of the earth, in the pulse of the steppe, and in the memories of those who witnessed them. Because legends never truly die,